For millennia, civilizations across the galaxy have struggled to define what true power really means. From ancient empires to the most advanced interstellar coalitions, we believed we understood its essence, domination, control, and the sheer force of will. No race, no species had ever questioned that understanding. Until humanity arrived. At first, we were dismissed. How could a species still in its infancy, barely surviving on a hostile planet, pose any real threat to the sophisticated, battle-hardened forces of the galaxy? Our technology, our tactics, our methods, they were primitive, almost laughable. They believed we were nothing more than another fleeting moment in the grand expanse of the cosmos, destined to fade into obscurity just like countless others before us. But they were wrong. It wasn't our technology or weapons that set us apart. It wasn't even our intelligence, though that too had proven invaluable. What we had, what they didn't understand, was a unique spirit, a raw, untapped potential to endure and adapt in ways no one could predict. While others relied on cold, calculated precision, humanity had something far deeper, something impossible to measure. The first encounter with our forces was unexpected. The sleek, invincible warships that had once ruled the stars found themselves challenged by our unyielding drive. They underestimated our ability to think outside the box, to turn the tides of war in ways they never anticipated. Our soldiers fought with a ferocity born of desperation and hope, a combination no algorithm or strategy could account for. Yet, as the galaxy watched, it was clear humanity was no longer the underdog. With each battle, with each conflict, we revealed a new layer of our strength. We didn't need overwhelming numbers or endless fleets. We had something far more dangerous: determination. And that determination had a way of turning the impossible into the inevitable. But this was just the beginning. The greatest test was yet to come. As more alien races watched in disbelief, the true challenge arose, a conflict so fierce, it threatened to rewrite the very nature of power itself. As humanity's forces pushed forward, an unexpected enemy emerged, one that seemed to know our weaknesses in ways even we couldn't understand. The power of the galaxy's greatest civilizations had been shaken to their core, and all eyes turned toward Earth. What they didn't know, what they could never have anticipated, was that we weren't done yet. The next move, the next twist in this war, would change everything. Just as the final battle drew near, a shadow appeared at the edge of the galaxy. An ancient force, long thought extinct, was waking. Could humanity hold its ground, or had we finally overplayed our hand? The answer lies ahead, and it may be more than any of us can handle. The first signs of trouble came in the form of strange signals, too erratic, too complex to be human-made. At first, they thought it was just another glitch in the system, a random anomaly. But soon, they couldn't ignore it. Earth's defenses, now a force to be reckoned with, began picking up traces of something far beyond anything they had encountered before. These signals weren't a threat, not yet. But the presence they hinted at, the sheer weight of something ancient and vast, sent chills through the command centers. For generations, the galaxy's powers had been shaped by the rules of war: strike first, calculate your losses, and then retreat if necessary. Victory was determined by numbers, by firepower, by strategy. But humanity's approach was different. No one had anticipated how we would change the landscape of conflict. It wasn't just our resilience that took them off guard, it was our capacity for unpredictability. While others relied on precision and logic, humanity thrived on chaos, on sheer will to survive. The higher-ups in the galaxy's most powerful alliances began to realize they'd underestimated us in every way. We fought not only to survive, but to adapt, to innovate, to think beyond the battlefield. Every new encounter with humanity left them more rattled than the last. Our enemies, once so sure of their superiority, began to ask a question that would haunt them forever. How did we know what they were going to do next? But the real shock came when they discovered something none of them could have predicted: a hidden truth buried deep within Earth's history. Humanity had always been divided, scattered across nations, cultures, and beliefs. But beneath the surface, there was something universal that bound us together. Some ancient memory, some untapped force that had always been with us, even before we learned to walk upright. It was in our DNA, a thread running through every person on Earth, waiting to be awakened. The scientists and military strategists working on the front lines couldn't quite explain it. But those who had witnessed it firsthand knew the truth. There was something in our past, something long buried and forgotten, that gave humanity an edge in war, a mysterious gift that no other species possessed. It wasn't just a matter of technology or tactics. It was something deeper, something primal. And as the galaxy's most powerful forces scrambled to find answers, the situation grew even more dire. It wasn't just about surviving the battles anymore. It was about facing an enemy far more dangerous than anything they had ever fought before, a force that threatened to erase everything humanity had worked for. No longer were we just fighting for our survival. Now, we were fighting to prove that we could rewrite the rules of power itself. The mysterious signals, now fully decoded, revealed something shocking. A fleet, an ancient fleet of unknown origin, was on its way to Earth. Their arrival would mark the beginning of a conflict that would test everything humanity had learned about warfare, survival, and the very nature of existence. The question wasn't whether we could win, it was whether we could even survive. And as the tension mounted, a cryptic message was intercepted, one that left Earth's top commanders on edge. A voice, distorted and garbled, spoke in a language no one could understand. But the final words were clear, and they chilled everyone to the core. We have seen what you are capable of. Prepare yourselves. The test is coming. And this time, we are the ones who will decide who holds the power. The countdown had begun. The unknown fleet was drawing closer, and there was no way to know what would happen next. Would humanity stand firm, or would this be the moment we finally met our match? The moment the fleet's arrival became certain, chaos spread like wildfire across Earth's command centers. Every nation, every surviving power from the broken remnants of our old world had to put aside differences and unite. A force unlike any other, ancient and seemingly unstoppable, was coming. And yet, despite all the fear and uncertainty, there was one question that lingered above all others. Could humanity's newfound strength withstand this new trial? The first signs of the enemy's approach were subtle, at first shifts in the stars, disturbances in the gravitational fields near the edge of our system. But then came the signal, the message that struck fear into the heart of every human who heard it. Prepare yourselves. We are coming, and your test begins now. There was no warning, no indication of who they were or where they came from, only that they had been watching for a long time, studying us, waiting for the right moment. And now that moment had come. Among the chaos, a small group of scientists, military leaders, and historians gathered to try and understand who these invaders were. They pored over ancient texts, legends, and alien records, seeking any hint of the ancient race's identity. Nothing. But then, a breakthrough came. An obscure reference to a long-lost civilization, one that once ruled the galaxy and disappeared without a trace. Some theorized they had destroyed themselves in a cataclysmic war. Others believed they had simply faded away. But whatever the truth, this unknown force had been preparing for this day for eons. They weren't just coming for Earth, they were coming to see if humanity could survive the ultimate test. But survival, as the humans quickly realized, wasn't guaranteed. The threat they faced was far greater than anything they had anticipated. The enemy's technology was far beyond anything Earth had developed, ships the size of moons, weapons capable of obliterating entire continents with a single strike. The question wasn't if we could fight back, it was if we could outlast them. As Earth's leaders scrambled to form a defense strategy, they were forced to reckon with a painful truth. Despite our resilience, despite the victories we had won in the past, we were still a young species compared to the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. They had perfected war over millennia, while we had only just begun to understand what it meant to wield power. And yet, despite our disadvantages, something stirred in the hearts of humanity. They knew this fight wasn't just about survival. It was about proving to the galaxy that we weren't weak, that we had a place in the stars. One of the most unexpected players in this battle emerged from the ranks of Earth's military, a soldier who had been on the front lines of every major conflict in recent years. His name wasn't well known, and he was far from the stereotypical hero. He wasn't a strategist, nor was he a brilliant scientist. He was just a soldier, a man who had seen the darkest parts of humanity's struggle. But his tenacity, his ability to adapt and improvise, became a symbol of humanity's greatest strength. As Earth's defenses began to form, he was thrust into the spotlight. He would lead the charge against the unknown invaders, not because he had a plan, but because he refused to accept defeat. And then there was the shadow in the galaxy. The ancient fleet was closing in, but another force lingered just beyond the edge of detection, something far older, far more enigmatic, and far more powerful than anything humanity had ever faced. It moved in silence, its presence barely a whisper, but its intentions were clear. It was watching humanity, studying us from the shadows, waiting for the moment to strike. As the first wave of the alien fleet began its descent into Earth's atmosphere, the tension on the ground reached a breaking point. Humanity had barely begun to grasp the gravity of the situation before the first blast rang out a devastating strike on the farthest outpost in our system. As Earth's commanders scrambled to mount a defense, they knew they were running out of time. What would happen when the fleet reached Earth? Would we be ready? And who was the true enemy, the invaders themselves, or something much darker lurking in the background? The countdown was on, and there was no turning back. The fate of humanity hung in the balance, and no one knew what the next move would bring. The skies above Earth were filled with an eerie calm as the first wave of alien ships descended, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. The air was thick with tension as the ground forces scrambled, their nerves stretched taut. For every soldier, every leader, there was a single paralyzing thought: how long can we hold them off? The first attack hit like a thunderclap. A shockwave of force reverberated through the atmosphere, shaking buildings to their foundations. A massive alien craft, its surface glowing with unknown energy, released a devastating barrage that obliterated a strategic defense outpost on the outskirts of the solar system. It was just the beginning. Earth's military response, though swift, was little more than a whisper against a storm. But humanity wasn't used to giving up. In every corner of the planet, people dug in their heels, ready to face the impossible. It wasn't just the alien fleet attacking, the planet itself seemed to react. Massive earthquakes rattled continents, while strange weather patterns unseen for millennia began to stir. Destruction was everywhere. Humanity's cities, once the heart of our civilization, were now nothing more than targets on the enemy's radar. Yet, amidst the chaos, a sense of unity grew. Old rivalries were forgotten as Earth's diverse nations came together in one singular goal: survival. As the battle raged on, the enigmatic soldier, the one who had fought in every major conflict and who had become humanity's symbol of defiance, stood at the front lines. He was no longer just a soldier. He was the living embodiment of humanity's refusal to bow. He gave orders, but his eyes were always fixed on the skies, watching as the alien ships rained fire down upon his people. The alien fleet was relentless, their weapons precise and devastating. But it wasn't just their technology that made them dangerous. It was their calm. They seemed to know the outcome before the fight had even begun. In the chaos, Earth scientists worked feverishly, trying to understand the alien technology, trying to find a weakness, anything they could use to their advantage. But every attempt was met with failure. The invaders' technology was too advanced, their tactics too refined. It was as if they had calculated every possible move humanity could make and countered it before we even had the chance to strike. And then came the unexpected twist. Just as humanity began to feel the weight of defeat, the strange, cryptic message that had haunted Earth's command centers resurfaced. Prepare yourselves. The test is coming. This time, the voice was clearer, more forceful. But it wasn't just a threat. There was something behind it, an underlying purpose that no one had yet uncovered. The invaders weren't just here to conquer. No, they were here to see something, to test something that only humanity could provide. The soldier who had led humanity's defenses, against all odds, suddenly felt a shiver crawl up his spine. He had always known that the enemy was powerful, but now he was beginning to understand. This wasn't just a war. It wasn't even a test. The invaders had come for something much more than territory or resources. They had come for humanity's very essence. The question that gnawed at the soldier's mind was simple: why us? Meanwhile, as the battle continued to escalate, whispers of an even greater threat began to emerge. A dark, unseen force lingered just beyond the reach of Earth's defenses, something older, far older than the alien invaders themselves. A presence that had been waiting, watching, ready to reveal itself at the precise moment. Could this force be the key to understanding the true nature of the invaders' mission? Or was it a new danger, something that humanity could never hope to survive? Time was running out. The alien fleet was closing in, the pressure mounting. The soldier knew that humanity's chance at victory at survival was slipping away, but he couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. Something was lurking in the shadows, something that would tip the scales of this war in ways no one could predict. As the sky darkened with the arrival of reinforcements, the soldier turned to face the approaching doom. He could feel the weight of the universe pressing down on him. It wasn't just his battle anymore. It was everyone's. And the questions grew louder. Could humanity find a way to outwit the impossible? Could we hold on to the hope that had carried us this far? Or would we finally face the consequences of having underestimated our true place in the galaxy? The answer was out there, somewhere, and humanity was running out of time to find it. Just as the last of Earth's forces regrouped, trying to brace for the next wave of destruction, a sudden shift in the air signaled something far more unsettling than they had anticipated. The sky above them, already torn with explosions and streaks of alien fire, flickered. The stars themselves seemed to distort, like a ripple in a pool of water, before snapping back into place. It was as if the very fabric of the universe had bent, and in that moment, a new presence was felt, a force so strong, so overwhelming, that even the alien fleet paused. The first moment of doubt spread like wildfire. The alien ships, once so sure of their victory, hesitated. They seemed to grow still, even uncertain, as though they had seen something that made them question everything. The invasion, which had seemed inevitable, suddenly felt like it was teetering on the edge of something much more dangerous. The humans, too, noticed the change. The tension that had been so palpable just moments before now carried a hint of something deeper, something neither side could fully understand. Then it happened. Without warning, a massive tear appeared in the sky. It was like a wound in space itself, dark, vast, and seemingly endless. From within it emerged something no one had expected, something that defied all logic. A fleet far older than the alien invaders appeared in an instant. Its ships were colossal, their design unfamiliar, ancient, and strange. The energy emanating from them was unlike anything Earth or the invaders had ever encountered. The alien fleet, now visibly shaken, retreated for the first time. A few ships remained, seemingly caught in a trance, as if in awe of what had just arrived. But it wasn't just the invaders that were on edge. Humanity, too, was thrown into a panic. The soldiers who had been fighting so fiercely, holding on to their last threads of hope, now stared up in disbelief. Was this the reinforcement they had hoped for? Or was this something far worse? The answer came swiftly, and it came in the form of a message this time, not from the enemy, but from the newly arrived fleet. The voice, deep and resonant, vibrated through every communication channel. "We are the architects. Your struggle was never our concern. We came for what you now possess, what you cannot even comprehend." The message was cold, detached, as if the speaker were addressing a lesser species, a species they had watched from afar, studying it for reasons unknown. The soldiers stood frozen. The architects? Who were they? What did they mean by what you now possess? The alien invaders, though seemingly powerful, were nothing compared to this new threat. The very idea that humanity was now caught between two seemingly unstoppable forces, one from the far reaches of the galaxy, and the other from some unfathomable void, was enough to make even the most battle-hardened soldiers question their fate. At the command center, the soldier who had led humanity's forces couldn't shake the feeling that Earth had become a pawn in a game played by forces far beyond their control. He felt the weight of his decisions pressing down on him. The mysterious nature of these architects, they were not here to conquer. not here to destroy. Their arrival felt far more personal. But why now? What had humanity done to draw their attention? As the Architects' fleet began to descend toward Earth, the alien invaders, despite their advanced weaponry and tactics, were suddenly scrambling. They hadn't expected this. They hadn't prepared for this. And neither had humanity. The sky above Earth became a battlefield once again, but this time, something shifted. The air was thick with the tension of an impending decision who would strike first. The invaders, whose cold, calculated approach had served them for centuries, or the Architects, whose intentions were shrouded in mystery? Or perhaps it would be humanity, caught in the middle, forced to make an impossible choice. The sound of approaching destruction grew louder with each passing second, and as the first ripples of energy collided between the two massive fleets, Earth soldiers stood ready. But the question that loomed larger than any explosion, larger than any blast, was simple. What did the Architects want with humanity? As the first wave of devastation was unleashed, a single final message came through, interrupting all channels of communication. Your test is not over, human. It is only just beginning. And then, the universe seemed to hold its breath. The battlefield above Earth erupted into chaos as the two alien fleets clashed with an intensity that threatened to tear the very fabric of space apart. Explosions ripped through the skies, sending shockwaves that could be felt on the ground. The alien invaders, who had once seemed so invincible, were now scrambling against the unexpected power of the Architects. Their massive ships trembled under the force of each blow, but it wasn't the battle between these colossal forces that held humanity's attention. No, it was the strange, unsettling feeling that had taken root in every human heart. The soldier who had stood at the forefront of humanity's resistance was now trapped between two overwhelming forces. He had always believed that humanity's strength came from its ability to fight back, to never give up, no matter how impossible the odds seemed. But as he watched the Architects and the invaders tear into each other, something shifted in his chest. It was as though he was witnessing a larger game unfold, one that Earth's people weren't meant to understand, at least not yet. He had been the symbol of defiance, of hope, but now, more than ever, he felt like a pawn caught in a war he never signed up for. He had to act, and fast. Earth couldn't afford to wait and watch from the sidelines, not anymore. He sent orders out, rallying humanity's last line of defense, their most advanced technology, their brightest minds. They had one chance to survive, but it would take more than just their strength. It would take a leap into the unknown. As the battle raged, Earth scientists launched a daring plan, one that had been whispered about but never tested. They would use the alien tech they had been able to salvage, fusing it with human ingenuity to create a weapon that could turn the tide. The soldier, torn between duty and desperation, watched as the weapon was deployed. It was a gamble, an untested risk, but it was humanity's last shot. In a brilliant flash of light, the weapon activated, sending a pulse through the battlefield that affected both fleets. The invaders staggered, their ships faltering for a brief moment, as though they had been momentarily paralyzed. But it wasn't enough to stop them. Their vessels surged back into motion, retaliating with a newfound ferocity. The Architects, on the other hand, seemed to recognize the shift. In an instant, their fleet turned toward the Earth's defenses, as though they had been waiting for the moment to act. It was then that the truth finally started to come into focus. The Architects weren't just watching the battle, they were orchestrating it. The invaders, the soldiers, even the Earth itself, were all part of their grand test. The soldier's eyes widened as he realized what the Architects meant by their cryptic message: your test is not over. It is only just beginning. The truth was far worse than anyone had imagined. Earth wasn't just being attacked, it was being assessed. Humanity's resilience, its ability to fight against overwhelming odds, was the very thing the Architects sought to measure. They weren't here to conquer, to invade. They were here to decide if humanity was worthy of survival in the grand scheme of the cosmos. With this revelation came a horrifying realization. Humanity's very existence was now on the line, not because of an alien invasion, but because the Architects had determined that Earth was a potential threat to something much larger than they had ever known. The soldier, standing amidst the ruins of the battlefield, understood that the fight for Earth wasn't just against the invaders. It was against an ancient calculating force that saw humanity as a potential risk to its universe-wide order. But before he could act, a final twist came to light. As the conflict neared its climax, the leader of the invading fleet, a figure whose face had remained hidden behind a mask of cold calculation, revealed himself. The soldier's breath caught in his throat. The leader wasn't an alien at all. He was human. A man who had been lost. A human long thought dead, who had somehow merged with the alien technology, becoming something else entirely. The final words of the leader were chilling. "You have no idea what you've unleashed." With those words, the truth behind the invasion, the architects, and humanity's place in the galaxy shattered everything the soldier thought he knew. Earth was no longer just fighting to survive. It was fighting for its very soul. The revelation that the leader of the alien invaders was, in fact, human sent shockwaves through the soldier's mind. The question that had haunted humanity for so long, "Why us?" had suddenly taken on a terrifying new meaning. The invaders were not from another distant world. They were humans, twisted and altered by their own ambition and desperation, lost in the vastness of space. The soldier could hardly process the magnitude of it. This wasn't just an alien invasion. This was a civil war, a betrayal from within humanity itself. The leader, now more machine than man, had fused himself with the alien technology, becoming something entirely different, something beyond human comprehension. And the rest of his fleet? They were just as corrupted, each one a distorted reflection of humanity's worst impulses. The soldier's mind raced, trying to make sense of it all. He thought back to the moment when the architects had spoken, their cold message echoing in his ears. "Your test is not over, human. It is only just beginning." What had they meant by that? It was clear now that the architects were watching, observing humanity's response to the crisis. But what was their endgame? The soldier knew he had to act quickly. If Earth had any chance of surviving, it would need to be united, not just in defense, but in understanding the deeper forces at play. He called together the remaining leaders of Earth's resistance. Together, they analyzed the situation, realizing that the architects were not an immediate threat. Their intentions remained unclear, but one thing was certain: humanity was now caught between the remnants of its own past mistakes and the cosmic forces that threatened to judge them. The question was no longer about surviving the invasion. It was about proving humanity's worth in a universe that had already deemed them unworthy. As the last of the invading fleet retreated, defeated but not entirely destroyed, the soldier and his allies focused on the human leader who had orchestrated it all. It wasn't easy, but with the help of the remaining alien technology, they managed to break through his defenses and expose the core of the twisted being he had become. In the end, it was not a weapon or an army that brought him down, but the very essence of humanity itself: hope, compassion, and the unwavering will to fight for a better future. But as the dust settled and the battle came to a close, the soldier realized that the real fight was just beginning. The architects had made it clear humanity had passed their test, but there would be more trials ahead. The galaxy was watching, waiting to see if Earth's people could rise above their past, evolve beyond the scars left by war, and prove that they were worthy of their place in the cosmos. In the days that followed, Earth's governments began to rebuild, working together in ways they never had before. The loss was heavy, and the scars would last for generations, but there was hope. Humanity had learned, perhaps the hardest lesson of all. It was not just about fighting to survive, it was about fighting for something greater, something worth preserving. As the soldier looked up at the stars, he knew one thing for sure. This was just the beginning. Humanity had survived its test, but the architects had made it clear this universe had its eyes on Earth now. The soldier wasn't sure what the future held, but he understood that humanity's real strength lay in its capacity to endure, to adapt, and to fight for a future they had yet to fully understand. The sky above wasn't just filled with stars, it was filled with possibilities. And Earth, though battered, was ready to face whatever came next.